Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, I've got a yay or nay review for you guys today about Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. Now, my yay or nay reviews are meant to be pretty quick and pretty unedited, so I will do my best to keep to that. And yeah, this is a book I've definitely been looking forward to. It was on my most anticipated books of the year list at the beginning of the year. This came out at the beginning of April, and I feel like anything that's within like a 3-ish month window of release, I feel good doing a yay or nay because I think people are still figuring out if they're going to buy it or get it from the library. And that's kind of what this is meant to be, is like, just at a baseline, do I think this is worth your time? So the premise of this book is that this is in Reconstruction era U.S. history, but it is an alternate history. So, I should also mention this is YA, and that will come in because I have very specific feelings about the fact that it's YA. So we're in Reconstruction era, but an alternate history where during the middle of the Civil War, there started to be a zombie outbreak in major U.S. cities. So the U.S. sort of stopped fighting, the humans stopped fighting each other and started fighting zombies. And in this context, the slaves are emancipated, so Black people in theory are free. There spring up all of these schools where Black and Native girls and boys are educated to become attendants, and attendants essentially are hired by rich white people to protect them. They're essentially like specialty zombie fighting bodyguards. So while they are technically free, they are still extremely limited socially. This book explores the story of Jane McKean, who is the Black daughter of a white plantation owner who is a woman. So her mother is white and her father is Black. That is kind of how things are presented to us. We don't get a lot of details until further in the book about that situation. But so she is Black though, and she cannot pass as white. So her mother does, she loves her and she tries to do what she can, but eventually she is sent to a school to become an attendant. So at that school, she gets up to some shenanigans, and eventually, for reasons, and I don't want to get too spoilery, but basically ends up going out west to a new settlement that is essentially trying to create like kind of a zombie-less paradise for white people. And I don't want to give much more away besides that because I think things unfold from there. What I want to say about this is that I fucking love this book. Now, I want to say that, let me tell you why I love this book, and then I want to quickly address a couple of criticisms just to give you a sense of if this is a book for you. So I love this book because to me, this is what YA should do, which is it is a book that talks about serious things. Like the number of issues that are addressed in this book is so many. Especially, I think the themes around passing and around privilege are explored in a really interesting way in this book. But it is talking about really serious things. There is like some gruesomeness. There is frank but non-graphic discussions of sexuality, which I appreciated. It's talking about serious topics that I think need to be addressed in literature for young people, but it's doing it in a way that is age appropriate. So it's not. If you're a teen who is not allowed to read like super graphic things, this is not going to be a problem for you to read. And it is doing it in a way where there are issues that are discussed directly in this book. There's some subtext, but it's not asking young readers to have to do too much work in that respect. But it's not in a universe that is so morally simplistic. And that is something that I really honestly have a problem with YA when we're thinking about it as being for young people. And I get a little impatient with some critiques that are essentially like, this book didn't come out and say that X, Y, and Z was bad. And it's like, okay, yeah, because we're trying to teach them how to have those discussions for themselves. I think that there's sometimes a premium on being overly didactic in YA, and I don't think that that is how we should be trying to talk about things with young people. I think it's good. What this does is it has very direct conversations about morally complex situations that are direct enough that the reader's not having to work to see what's being talked about, and that's what I think is age appropriate, but it's not dumbing it down, and there's not easy right and wrongs in a lot of these situations. I will say I wish we had slightly more complicated villains. I think that they can be slightly simplistic, But this gets into why I think that this is also really great, which is this is the first book in a series. So I think this book I think for me, the arc in this book was satisfying, getting into my whole series discussion that I had about first books and what they need to do. I do think that this was a satisfying episode in and of itself, but I really think it was doing a lot of interesting things to start a series that can go some really interesting places. So quickly, let me address some of the criticisms I've seen, because while I absolutely love this, I think this is like a 4.5 star book for me. So like one of my favorite things I've read so far this year. And again, to me, just a excellent example of what YA can do well. I have seen some criticisms of this. Some people feel like this is structurally weird, which I'll grant. I think that the first chunk of this book is probably a little too long. But again, to me, I have some forgiveness for that because it's the first book in a series, and first books in series always tend to have some like weird structure, or often, let me say, have some weird structural things happening because it's getting the macro arc going and it's getting the book itself going. So to me, I have forgiveness for that. The second criticism I've seen is that the main character is unlikable. I have a lot of feelings about when people say that, especially about teenage characters and especially about female teenage characters. I'm not saying this is always true, but I do think sometimes that critique smacks a little bit of misogyny or internalized misogyny because, and your mileage may vary. So let me just I'm totally acknowledging that your mileage is going to vary on this, but she is unlikable in some places. She is a badass zombie killer who has, essentially has a very complicated and painful backstory, and she is in extremely difficult situations, and she's 16. So like, yeah, she's gonna be whiny sometimes. She's 16. Yeah, she's gonna make some morally gray decisions. She's in a fucked up situation. Like, I don't find that those criticisms in this particular book are very resonant. And again, some people, if that was your experience of the book, I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. I'm just saying I personally don't see that. There are some books where I'm like, yeah, this character is unlikable, and like I see that would be a real barrier to you enjoying this. An example of that potentially for me is the Hazelwood. I found that heroine much more unlikable than this particular heroine. I guess I just don't really see that criticism, but it's one that has been made by a few people that when I was scrolling through Goodreads, so like, let me just put that out there. And then finally, the criticism that I think is most valid and most what I would say, the reason I give this a bit of a pass is because this is the first in a series, which is that there's a lot of talk in the acknowledgments about her being inspired by the actual schools in American history that were set up for Native children, and they were taken away from their parents and re-educated, and like this happened in both the US and Canada, and I think Australia, like pretty much any place where there were Native peoples, white people were doing this. And the criticism is, okay, well, if that was your inspiration, where are the Native people in this book? There's really only one. And I think that I hear that criticism. To me, I was assuming based on that acknowledgement of like, oh, she's setting things up to do more with that in the series. And I think that there's some clear signaling in this book that we're going to be hearing a lot more from Native characters in upcoming books. That being said, if that proves to not be the case, I will say that's a completely valid criticism, because I think that there probably could have been more of that in this book I think there should be more of that in this series. We'll see what happens is basically what I would say. So anyway, I just wanted to address some of those pieces of criticism, but all that to say, I think that this is super fun. Like, this is a very enjoyable read that has some real shit in it, and like talking about especially the discussion around passing and how she handles that, I think was really, really well done, and I think she subverts some typical tropes in that respect in a way that I really enjoyed, and I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say much more than that. But all that to say, I personally think that this is a big yay. I'm very happy that I bought this, and if nothing else, I would certainly recommend getting in line for it at the library, because I think it is worth reading. Even if you don't end up enjoying it, I think it's definitely something like you will have a response to. So that's my take. Big yay on this for me. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I will talk to you later. Bye.